If only I had more confidence. If only I could be the confident, strong, assertive person that I know I can be. If only I could elevate my confidence so that I could do the thing, get to the place, to start the business, whatever it is that you're dreaming of doing. If you've ever said or thought any of those things, then you are in the absolute right place. Today, on this short video, I am going to run you through a confidence skills training that has the potential, and I know this is a lofty promise, but listen, it has the potential to elevate your confidence and your level of assertiveness as you move forward in pursuing whatever it is that you're trying to do in your next level of leadership without having to run through a bunch of hoops or jump through a bunch of hoops or do a bunch of things. So stick around to the end because I am going to give you the formula for developing confidence and experiencing confidence right now. So are you ready for your confidence skills training? I'm Marcia Amaro. I am your leadership communication coach and your confidence expert, and I am going to help you elevate your leadership by elevating your confidence. So let's start by clarifying what confidence really is, because I believe that one of the reasons why we struggle so much with this sense of confidence is because we don't really understand what it is. See, we have been sold this bill of goods that says that you need to be confident before you set out to do whatever, right? Before you start the business, before you go on the venture, before you record play and start your video, or hit play, hit record, not record play, hit record and start your video before you do anything. But here's the thing, confidence is not a prerequisite, it is actually a result. So let's get that ingrained in our brain. You do not need to have confidence before you do anything. Confidence comes from doing the thing. So, one of the biggest mistakes that we make is misunderstanding what confidence is and when we need it. Most of the time, when we say we need confidence, what we really need is the courage to get started. It's the courage to take that first step, it's the determination and the will to move forward in spite of not knowing everything, in spite of not having all the answers, in spite of not feeling 100% ready. That is what we really need most of the time, right? Now, confidence is important because when you have a sense of confidence, you show up differently, right? But notice how I'm saying sense of confidence, not necessarily confidence, because that's the other misconception. We tend to think that once you have confidence, you have it and that's it, that it's an all or nothing, that you either have confidence or you don't have confidence, that you are. Once you're confident all the time because it's an innate or an inner thing that doesn't move and doesn't budge. But here's the reality, confidence is attached to tasks. It's attached to different things that we might want to be doing or that we might need to do. And it's attached to the belief we have of how trustworthy we are in completing that task. So think about, for example, the first time you start driving, if you drive a car, or the first time you start riding a bike, if you don't drive a car, and think about how confident you were when you got behind the wheel of that car or sat on that seat in that bike. You probably weren't feeling very confident, and yet you did it. It might not have been great. My first experience driving was horrendous. My poor oldest brother took on the task of taking me out to drive the first time, and we almost ran into a post, like a light post. It was bad. But I eventually drove, and I've been driving for a long, long time, right? And the more I did it, the more confident I felt behind the wheel. And it got to the point where I used to drive a stick shift and I could drive my stick while eating, while putting makeup on, while doing all these other things. And I didn't even have to think about it because the confidence came as I did the thing, right? And I am going to give you a formula for how confidence works in a minute. So stick around, don't go anywhere. I just want to get these things out of the way, right? So the first misconception is that you need confidence before getting started, and you don't. Most of the time, what you really need is courage and determination to get started. The second misunderstanding or misconception is that once you have confidence, you're confident in everything, you're confident all the time, and it's an all or nothing type of thing, when it really isn't. Confidence is more about um, each task. or each event or each situation, and you feel confident depending on your competence in that level, in that particular skill, right? So everybody's confident at something, but nobody's confident at everything. And that's something that I say all the time. Everybody's confident at something, nobody is confident at everything. So it's important to get that in our brain and in our minds, right? Now, the third misconception that we have is believing that confidence is an end in and of itself. So it's something that you pursue. It's something that you work towards or that you try to achieve. Confidence is not an end. Yes, it is a result, but it's not an end in and of itself, right? When we want confidence, when we're looking for confidence, what we're really looking for is evidence that we can do what we set out to do and that we can be trusted to get it done, right? So we want confidence because we want to achieve something, or we want confidence because we want to believe that we can do something, right? So the end result that we're looking for, what we're really aiming for, is not confidence, it's self trust. It's being able to trust ourselves to move forward and do the thing that we said we would do. It's trusting, it's being able to trust that we have what it takes and that we can, in fact, get to that final destination that we're looking for, right? So once we understand these three things, then it's easier to see how the pieces of the formula fall together and how we can use them to move forward. So here's the confidence formula. Confidence boils down to three C's. Three C's. That's simple. And the three C's are competence, consistency, and commitment. I'll repeat them again. The formula for confidence is three C's: competence, consistency, and commitment. It's that simple. Now, the competence piece is all to do with the skills, the abilities, and the talents that you possess, right? So, the more you increase your competence in a particular area, the more confidence you're going to experience as you head out to do things related to those skills, talents, or abilities, right? So, you can do that in many different ways. You can get more education, like you can enroll in a course, you can get a certification, you can, I don't know, read a book. That's another way, right? You can get a mentor or a coach, a strategist, a consultant, somebody that can walk you or help you walk through the path that you want to go to. Or you can simply look at the skills that you already have and see how you can translate some of those skills into whatever it is that you're trying to do. But the competence piece has to do with your knowledge and your ability and the skill level, the skill set that you have in order to perform the task at hand, right? Which is why the more I drove, right? The more I took classes, they ended up hiring someone to teach me, right? So the more I took classes and the more I learned about how the driving part worked and all these things, I developed that skill. I developed that ability, and therefore I felt more competent, right? When I started teaching, I was so bad. I was so bad. When I started doing this, when I started recording videos, I was so bad. But the more you learn and the more you grow, then the more confidence you experience and you feel, and the greater your sense of confidence, because you know you have the skill, the ability, and the talent to get done whatever it is that you need to get done. Right. So that's the first piece. So if you are experiencing a sense of not having enough confidence, my first suggestion would be figure out what skill sets you're missing, right? And figure out how you can learn more about those skill sets. Now, be very specific and deliberate, right? It's just in time learning. It's not trying to know everything. It's what do you specifically need to get started? What do you specifically need to know to get going? The first time I built a website, and I build my own websites for years, but the first time I did it, it was HDMI, HDMI, no, HTML. HTML, too many letters, too many acronyms. Anyway, it was code and it was really difficult to get it done. And you had to know all these things. And I just was frozen for the longest time trying to figure out, okay, what on earth do I do? And then I realized, you know what? All I need to be able to do is to get the initial frame on. So what specifically do I need for that initial frame with the very basics? Then I learned how to add a content form, right? Where people could give me their information. And then I learned how to add banners, and then I learned how to add images, and then I learned how to do things one piece at a time. And the more I learned each individual skill, the more confident I felt that I could do more and more and more and more. Right. So that's the competence piece in the formula. The second one is consistency. There is a truth about anything that you're trying to do, where you go through levels of competence and levels of understanding, right, of consciousness within this particular skill, right? So when you start doing something, you start at what is called the unconscious incompetence level, which means that you don't know what you don't know. Right? There are things that you should know in order to do this thing that you're not even aware exist, and therefore you can't prepare for them because you don't know they exist. But then you run through the levels, and at the very top is mastery, right? And mastery is an unconscious competence where you can do it. It's second nature. You don't have to think about it, and it just flows out of you, right? And the way you get there is through something called deliberate practice. And deliberate practice requires you to be consistent. To be consistent. So if you are trying to get better at speaking in public, speak in public more, but make it deliberate, right? Make it so that you have the opportunity to practice the specific things that are hard for you right now so that they become more and more second nature with time, right? And deliberate practice has to be incremental as well. So at the beginning, when you're first starting to practice and you don't know what you don't know, you are starting really slow and really easy, what they call the low hanging fruit, right? So maybe you put together a webinar and you invite your best friend, your mom, your sister, and your spouse. And those are the four people that show up because you feel confident with them. Then for the next one, you start inviting strangers, and you keep increasing the level of difficulty, and you keep increasing what you focus, or shifting, sorry, what you focus on, so that you can continue to refine and tweak and expand on the things that you need to refine and expand. Makes sense? But that consistency of putting in the reps, of going back and just doing what you need to do, of utilizing the momentum that you get from doing one thing to do the next. And as you consistently show up, as you consistently build on what you've already created, then you start to grow that sense of confidence because, hey, I've done this a couple 100,000 times, right? Dean Graziosi always uses the example of tying your shoe. How confident are you that you can tie your shoe? Probably very confident because you've done it a couple 100,000 times, right? And that's exaggerating, but you know what I mean. So the more you do something, the more consistent you are in showing up and putting in the reps and in doing it regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the initial result that you might see, the more you're going to experience an enhanced sense of confidence. And then the final piece of the formula is commitment. Commitment. And what commitment means is that you are determined to get to the other end of this. You're determined to go from not knowing anything to mastery. You're determined to expand and learn the skills that you need. You are not taking no for an answer, and you're not letting anything or anyone, including yourself, get in the way. And the best way to move towards expanding that commitment is doing three important, simple, but not easy shifts, right? And they're all F sounds, right? So you're going to work on your focus, your physiology, and your frames. Your focus, your physiology, and your frames. Let's start with focus. Very often, when we experience a lack of confidence, it's because we're worried or we fear the results or the consequences of what we're doing, especially as it relates to how other people will see us or what other people will think of us, right? So when we can shift the focus and stop worrying about ourselves so much and start thinking more about the other person or people who will gain something from us attempting this, who will be benefited by the information and the expertise and the talent and the ability and the thing that we're trying to do. When we shift the focus from what's going to happen with me to what can I bring to others, my family, my clients, my team, right? Then that releases a lot of the pressure and a lot of the tension because it stops being about me and about how I'm going to look. It doesn't matter how I look as long as I'm helping someone else. Have you noticed how often we will not do things for ourselves, but we will do them for other people? I know, for example, I used to be terrified of the phone. I had a number of bad experiences and I went through a period of having to cold call for work and it was horrible. And so I developed this aversion to calling people on the phone. But when I had to call for my daughters to solve something for them, didn't think about it twice. I just did it, right? And most of us have experienced that in one way or another. Things we will not do for ourselves, things we will come up with a million excuses around so that we don't have to do them when it's for ourselves, but when it's for someone we love, when it's for someone else, when it's for the benefit of others, then it doesn't matter. We get up and we do it. You know, how many salespeople do more sales when it's about their boss or about their company or about something outside of themselves? But when it's just for them, they feel stuck and it's hard to get moving and it's hard to see the results, right? So when you can shift the focus away from you and towards the other people or person that is going to gain something from it, then that is going to start cementing your commitment to moving forward because it's no longer about whether you do it or not. It's no longer about how you look or not. It's about the other person that you're going to help and support, and that's going to get benefited from the situation and from whatever it is that you're trying to do. The second is physiology. Most of us understand that our mind can affect our body, right? Most of us know this, but very few of us have yet to understand that our body can change our mind as well. So it works both ways. So when you're starting to experience that you can't move forward, that you're about to give up, that there's no point, that you don't know what the next step is, whatever the case may be. And you're starting to experience this sense of lack of confidence, shift your physiology. And the easiest way to do this is to notice your default reaction when you're sensing that lack of confidence, right? So, for example, you might experience that you slouch a little bit, or you might experience that your breathing gets heavy, or you might experience that, I don't know, that you start looking down, or that your face gets somber, or that you start frowning. Whatever it is that you notice is a pattern for you, is your default when you experience a lack of confidence, make it a point to deliberately do the opposite. Deliberately do the opposite. So if you slouch, get up straight. If you tend to get small and kind of like curl up, get big, take up space. If you notice that your chin goes down, move it up. If your breathing gets shallow, breathe deeply on purpose. Whatever it is that you notice is your default. When you experience that sense of lack of confidence, do the absolute opposite. And you're going to start noticing how your brain gets a little confused at first and it's like, okay, this doesn't make sense. You're supposed to be nervous. You're supposed to not be confident or certain, but your body's telling me that you are. What's going on here? And eventually, your brain is going to start picking up the cues from your body, from what you're doing. And it's going to shift into, okay, if I'm acting this way, if the body's acting this way, then it must mean that we're certain about this thing. And then you can carry on with whatever it is that you're committed to doing. And then the final thing is frame. So we hear about reframing all the time, and reframing is absolutely key and it's really important. Anything that you are experiencing or sensing or thinking that is not helpful, that is leading you to believe things that are not supportive of what you want to do in the end. Anything that you're experiencing that is not adding to the experience or allowing you to keep with your commitments, to stick with your commitments and move forward and have that consistency and develop that competence needs to be shifted. It needs to be reframed. The problem we have is that most people tell you, okay, if you're thinking this and this is not helpful, then tell yourself the opposite. And when you start telling yourself the opposite, you're eventually going to get to the point where your brain believes it and where you start acting differently. And that's not necessarily true. And here's why. Our brain is very smart. And our brain sends red flags and alerts and alarms, sets off alarms when it perceives that it's being lied to, when it perceives that you're lying to yourself. And your brain has what it's called the confirmation bias, where it's going to actively look for all the information that is going to confirm that what it believed it's true and whatever it's being fed that's contrary to that is a lie. And it's not going to allow you to internalize it as long as it perceives it as a lie. All right. So, what we get to do instead of trying to lie to ourselves and trying to convince our brains of something that it is going to find all the evidence in the world that is not true, we get to take this in chunks and step by step. So instead of jumping from I can't speak on stage to I'm a master on stage, or from I'm terrified to speak on stage to I love speaking on stage, which is going to set your brain off on a quest for all the evidence that that is not true, then take it to the next level that is believable, right? And it could be as simple as adding the word yet at the end, right? So I can't speak on stage yet, right? Or I'm not comfortable on stage yet, right? And just take it to that next level. The yet, that you can believe. Okay, so what other things have I experienced that I wasn't comfortable at the beginning, but that I eventually got comfortable with? And that's evidence that the yet is true. And that's what your brain is going to find, is that evidence, right? If the yet doesn't work for whatever reason, let's say that yours is I'm terrified to speak on stage, then find whatever feels believable that is one step closer to I'm comfortable to being on stage. I'm comfortable with being on stage, right? So it could be I am scared to be on stage right now, but I can learn some skills that will help me. I can learn some skills that will help me, right? That is true. And your brain can buy into that. And it's going to step you out of that whole, no, I'm just terrified period, right? So what is the next thing that feels believable, that is moving you in the right direction? And that's how you reframe it. That's how you shift it. It doesn't have to be jumping from one extreme to the other. In fact, that is counterproductive, and it's detrimental to the confidence that we're trying to build, right? Or the sense of confidence that we're trying to build. What we get to do is take it one step at a time and move closer and closer and closer and closer and closer as we cement that new belief as the truth, as the baseline. Make sense? I hope it does. And then what exactly is it that we are going to do in order to start experiencing this sense of confidence right now? So I don't have the time to go into all the details, but there are three secrets that are going to help you create that sense of confidence when you need it, where you need it. And I created a mini course around it. It's called Create Confidence on Demand. And you can get access to it by going to confidence.marciamala.com. And I will have the link in the description. But just really quickly, it has to do with the shifts that I just mentioned, right? So when you are looking to create confidence on demand, you get to quickly, in a few minutes, with some tools that are in the mini course that I mentioned, you're going to shift your focus, shift your body, and shift your intention, right? So FBI is what I call it. Shift your focus, shift your body, and shift your intention. If you can focus on the right things using these amazing tools that we talk about in the course, if you can shift your body, and we talked about that before, and if you can shift your intention, or at least be really clear on the intention behind what it is that you're doing and why it's important, then you will be able to create enough of a sense of confidence to move you forward, so that you can then get into the competence, get into the consistency, and get into the commitment that you made with yourself to do this thing. Well, I hope this has been helpful. If it has, share it with someone. And now I have a question for you. What aspect of confidence is most challenging to you? Connect in the comments, let me know. And if you haven't, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you next time. Chat soon.